Hey, son, how you doing?
Hey, Dad, good. Happy to be here. How you doing?
So this is episode number 5 in our LOL series. So we're keeping up the pace. We've got 8 episodes out now. What do you think about that?
Pretty cool. Yeah, the catalog's climbing. It's cool to see. What got it going on?
I'm really enjoying this. So today, as you can probably tell, we're going to be talking about Disneyland. And I've got my name tag on just in case you're confused. My name is Larry. I'm from Vallejo.
Yes.
When we first did our first podcast, we talked about covering these different topics, right? But also, this is a topic for us that I'll touch upon from time to time. Why do I say I'm stumbling to success? I mentioned in the first podcast that my life is not really planned. Opportunity pops up, and I happen to be standing in the right spot. That's the Lord in my life, but also I take a lot of humor out of it because I haven't really sweated my life out. I didn't really look at my life as, where am I going to be next week? Where am I going to be in a year? Pretty much, if I was alive today, I figured I was doing all right.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that I stumbled into on my path to success was Disneyland. Now, last time we talked, when you told me about your dad, you mentioned that I had gone to China for a little while, for 2 weeks. And that's when I worked for Sony. And I was there for maybe close to a year. And they sent me to Shanghai to go look at their manufacturing plant there compared to manufacturing here in the US. Well, it's pretty obvious. When I got there in Shanghai, they assigned me a manager to walk me around, and he was actually management-wise was one step higher than me on the totem pole. And I made in a day what he made in a month. So
Dang.
that answers question number 1. How can these picture tubes be built in China for a tenth of what they can be made for in the US? Well, that's reason number 1. And also, the employees there were intelligent, focused. They're not looking at their watch for their next break or none of that. They're working. And they could afford to have 5 inspection points on their production line. So in manufacturing, the earlier you can find a defect in the process, the less it costs you to throw it out. So any products reaching the end of the process that are defective cost the company the full value of what it took to manufacture it, and they have to toss it out. So that's why China was so much more competitive than us. With 5 inspection stations, we had 3.
Wow.
We had 3 inspection stations. So there's no competition, which leads me to why was I looking for a job about a year and a half after getting out of the Navy? It's because Sony closed the plant. Clearly, it was not profitable. So I got laid off, and I was laid off for about 6 months.
Yeah.
And it took a while. It took me 6 months actually. Took me maybe 3 months to get hired, but Disney was having a hiring freeze at that time. So they didn't actually call me and said, "We're ready for you to report to work," until after I'd been laid off from Sony for 6 months.
Wow. So you were hired, but then you couldn't start for a while?
That's right. They offered
Wow.
me the position, gave me my salary and all that. I mean, they didn't pay me, but they told me what my salary would be, but I couldn't start yet. Luckily, Sony somehow got their payroll records mixed up or something. They gave me a severance package, which should have paid me for 2 months and stopped. And it went on for 4 months.
Wow.
See how your dad stumbles into success? How things work in your dad's life. I'm not saying
Yes.
it's happened to anybody else that got laid off from Sony, but it happened to your dad.
Well,
So
hey,
they
that's a
end
blessing.
So between Sony still giving me a bit of money and the retirement I had coming in and a little bit of scratch I could get for cooking at the IHOP, we were okay until finally the phone rang from Disney and they said, "We're ready."
I bet that was an exciting
And
call.
but how did I get that offer? What wait, hold on, what happened? So after I got laid off from, Sony, I got busy. I'm online, I'm looking at trying to find work, going to places for interviews, nothing's really connecting. So there was a job fair in San Diego, down in Old Town, and I'm walking around talking to folks. Of course, I got a folder full of resumes and stuff, and I see a Disney table. I go, "Hey, I never thought about working for Disney, but let me go over and see what they got." And so I talked to a gentleman, his name was Paul Maldia, and I would end up working for him in 3 different positions at Disney in the next 10 years. But at the time, he was just a friendly fella wearing a Disney name tag like I'm wearing right now, who said, "What do you got for me?" And it turned out he was a retired warrant officer from the Navy, so we kinda had that in common, but I had a resume that I handed him. And he talked to me a little bit about what the position was at Disney, that the current VP of maintenance at Disneyland was a retired general. And he was specifically looking for retired maintenance officers from the military. Well, you remember what I did the whole time, 16 years that I was a commissioned officer? Remember what I did?
Exactly that, right?
Maintenance,
Yeah.
aircraft maintenance. And I did pretty well at that. I became the assistant department head of maintenance for three squadrons, fleet squadrons, and my first job as a aviation maintenance duty officer was at VF-124. That was the training squadron for all the pilots and NFOs coming through to learn how to fly in the F-14. So I did. I had a lot of maintenance experience, and I knew a lot about preventative maintenance. It's a big deal in the Navy. And Paul and I talked about all that, and then we were done with our conversation, and I walked away, and I started thinking about what we just talked about, Paul Maldia and I. And I went back, and I said, "Hey, Paul, you said a couple of things about working at Disneyland I wanted to get some more information about." So we talked for another 15 minutes and then I walked away. And my job search continued. Nothing is really materializing for me. But Sony was still paying me when the phone call came. And they said, "We would like to hire you." I had all but forgot about Paul and Disneyland and all that. They said, "We really want to hire you. We want to pay you 65,000 a year." That's not bad.
That
I think
time.
as a lieutenant commander at the time, I was bringing home about that, maybe slightly less, maybe closer to 60. I mean, this was back
Yeah.
in
Yeah, well, I was gonna
2001.
ask.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's not bad, 65. I think Sony was paying me like 40 something a year, so that wasn't bad. And so I said, "Great, when can I start?" And Donna Young, she was the recruiter. She really stayed in touch with me over the next several months, letting me know, "Hey, don't get discouraged. Time is coming. We're going to get
Yeah.
through this. And when we do, you're getting a call." And so in July of 2001, I got the call. They said, "Well, when can you be here?" I said, "In 15 minutes."
Yeah.
No, they, because I was unemployed at the time, I said, "Look, when do you want me there?" They said,
Yeah.
on July 15th. And so I got hired. You'll never guess who was there waiting for me. Now I started on third shift. So my shift started at 10 o'clock at night. It was a 4-day schedule. So I got 3 days off. I showed up for my first day of work and guess who's waiting for me? Do you know?
No, who was it? Oh, I
Gary
think I know.
Coburn
Gary, yes, yes, the
that
legend.
trained me. And remember when we had our conversation about your dad last week, he took me around, showed me all the rides that we were responsible for, and also told me everybody that was doing a good job and
Yeah.
everybody that wasn't. And you know, Gary, not always out of earshot when he was making those statements.
Not always.
But that's how I stumbled into that. I stumbled into that job, and it was a job that changed my life. Now, I'd been an officer in the Navy for 24 and a half years, and I learned a lot about leadership. And there were some things I accomplished in the Navy that were pure leadership. But when I got to Disney, it's a whole different ball game. Now I'm working with a union, right? Union people. And a lot of them took offense to the hiring of retired military maintenance officers. Now, I understood his strategy. A lot of what we needed and did at Disneyland was develop preventative maintenance programs, systematic maintenance, the purpose of which is to keep the rides operating longer and safer. It's a good program, real good.
Yeah.
And there was a need for that. So his philosophy was a good one. But here's what the union guys said when they first met me. Oh, another one of them damn retired officers come in here. They're
Oh,
probably
man.
going to have us marching in the parking lot.
Had a
Right?
bad taste.
But I get that. That's the perception. And so, but it was easy enough for me to understand that and answer their concern. And I get why you're concerned. But here's what I want to do. I want to hear what you have to say. In fact, I'm going to walk with you out on the work. I want you to tell me. I don't know how your work should be done. You're going to tell me how the work gets done. It's a humbleness. See, I get it.
Yeah.
And by the way, the union at Disneyland is the best I ever worked with because we're all working for the same reason. We're all working for Walt.
Yeah.
So it wasn't an us versus them relationship, management to the union. In fact, that never really came up, except in one case where there was an individual that was really struggling to kind of follow the rules a little bit. And the union actually partnered with us on that issue. That was the only time I ever had a member of the union need some extra attention. But generally, the union, it was just like these guys are professionals. They're good at what they do. Wow, are they good at what they do? Because you can't produce a product like Disney and Disneyland without some real professionals maintaining those rides and keeping them safe. So, as far as coming into a union environment, what I found out was we're all on the same team. And I'm not sure that's always the same working in other companies, but with Disney, that's a thing. And the
Yeah.
people in the union, they're just good people. I didn't even think of them as being union members. I thought of them as these are real good partners to help us succeed here in this park that Walt built. So that part of it, initially, I kind of wondered how I would fit in, especially since the first response was, hey, you going to have us marching in the parking lot before work? Because,
Right.
we got to punch out for lunch. We can't march today.
Oh, yeah, they're serious. The unions are serious about those breaks.
And Disney was serious about those breaks too, by the
Yeah.
way.
True.
You need your rest time and you need your lunch without interruption. So we held that standard. That was a real strong meeting the union halfway without complaint. Yes, you
Yeah.
need breaks. It's the manager's job to schedule time and schedule work around those requirements. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Were the union employees hourly or were they salary as well?
No, they were
Do you
hourly.
remember? Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And several of them I encouraged to apply for management positions and they succeeded. They became managers themselves. No, I love Disney and I talked a little bit about the leadership there. One of the things that I really enjoyed is being part of what Walt built. And I became a student of Walter Elias Disney. And he was phenomenal. He kept the whole organization running on a superior path. Now, it's hard for a company full of employees to get people focused and moving in the same direction and wanting to move in the same direction.
Right.
But, almost to a person, you come across exceptions occasionally, but generally, the work environment, everybody is doing what they need to do and lifting each other up to get done what they need to do because we're working for Walt today.
Yeah.
Sometimes I joke. Sometimes I say, well, don't tell anybody, but Walt is a,
Yes.
and
He's always listening.
I'll give him a minute to digest that. And they'll say, well, what do you mean? And I'll say, in the hearts and minds of everyone who works here.
Yeah.
Because it's true. That's the standard. And it's easy enough to have people remind themselves that this is Walt's Park and we got to do things a little differently. Whether they're out on stage with the guests or back of house doing work, that's a common theme for both management and the craft. We don't even call them union. They're the craft. They're craft persons, which is different than an employee. It means they have a level of skill that's special and unique.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
so working at Disneyland for me was a wonder. I really loved it, and the leadership opportunities I had. So Disney had they don't have it anymore. I think they have a different program, but at the time they call it the Spirit of Disney Award. And it's a award that's given that in Walt's spirit, we see people around us. They don't even have to work for us, but we see people around us upholding the spirit of Walt Disney. They're doing extra things, paying extra attention, whether it's to guests or whether it's to the quality of their work or their timeliness of their production. They're doing extra stuff and innovating, thinking. How many employees come to work and think how to do better?
Yes.
I think
Right.
I think I was one. I think you're one, but I'm not sure everybody comes to work
Yeah.
thinking about what can I do today? Now,
Right.
we're human beings. Sometimes we don't reach that standard, but the general trend is people that work at Disneyland have that mindset.
Yeah.
I'm sure it passes the common sense test that there are people that work at Disneyland that came as children and they looked at their parents and they said, Mom, I'm going to be Aladdin or I'm going to be Snow White. And they
Yeah.
do because they grow up with that dream and that idea. But so the spirit of Walt Disney is really created to recognize those who live at that standard by their own choice, not by demand. And
Yeah.
so I took that to heart because when I came to Disney, it really brought it home because it's an environment that invites that. See, the Navy people are in there to give back, to provide service, to do
Yeah.
what the country needs. So that's a standard right there that's pretty tall. But I think sometimes Disney even eclipsed that because what I just described in the Navy is dedication. What I described in Disney is love.
Yeah.
So remember, this podcast is to love out loud, but also laugh out loud. Those things were both very important ingredients at Disney. But there were plenty of employees at Disney who were Disney files. You could ask them anything. Their depth of knowledge
Oh,
about
yeah.
Disney, Disneyland, where all the hidden Mickeys are, So with all that background and environment that I'm describing to you, they had this Spirit of Disney award. So I looked around and not only on my team, but in the people around me for the first, I think, 4 or 5 years, because after that point, the Spirit of Disney Award was discontinued. But during those first 4 or 5 years, I identified 11 people over that time, not all at once. I don't have a clipboard. Okay, there's 1, there's 2, there's 3. Trevor,
Yeah,
where are you at? You're
all in
number
one day. I
4.
know, give me one of them.
No, but over time, I saw people. And one of the key things for me about leadership, I really learned at Disneyland. One is you really need to spend your time catching people. Sneak up on them if you have to. Catch them doing stuff right.
Yeah.
And then remember, write it down.
Oh, yeah.
Write it down. Because when it comes time, eval time or Spirit of Disney, or just because when you see it, sometimes you're busy, there's stuff going on. It's important to make a note. And if you can circle around and see them tomorrow, say something about what you saw.
Yeah.
But that's not enough. Write it down because when it matters, when it's time for your yearly review, it's important to be able to be accurate. By the way, it improves your credibility as a manager if you remember.
Oh, yeah.
You remember I did that? Yeah.
That's true, yeah, that'll go a
Because
long way.
for an evaluation to be effective, it has to show that you cared enough to watch and notice. You see? Those things are
Yeah,
very rare in leadership. And
true.
normally when you get an eval, sometimes it doesn't even seem like, was this written for me or somebody else? Because I don't recognize anything in here. But that's human nature. Managers get overwhelmed, that kind of stuff. I made it a point to catch people doing stuff right. And
Yeah,
that's what gave me a lot of substantiation for writing up the submissions for people to receive the Spirit of Disney Award. The other thing I learned, and it wasn't as apparent or obvious in the Navy, because when I walked in as a lieutenant commander to a room that had chiefs and enlisted people in there, they pay attention. Now, I might be a jerk. I might not have any credibility. I might not be, I have to be careful how I say this because most of the commissioned officers I worked with were top notch. Once in a while, you get one that wasn't cut from the same cloth, and that
oh,
happened.
yeah,
It's human nature. So even the one who was, let's call it problematic, maybe, especially amongst the E7s. As an officer in the Navy, you really live and die by the chief's mess, and you need to earn their respect. Can you command it? Yes, you can. Can you earn it? It's much more important to earn the respect than you don't need to command it. See the difference? But the
yeah,
Navy structured that way where I could walk into a room just based on my uniform and everybody's paying attention. You walk into a shop with union guys there, and they all know that I'm a retired officer. Do they have to listen to a word I have to say? Sort of no. Sort of not,
yeah,
right? So the other thing I learned working at Disney is the measure of leadership is what happens when the leader leaves the room. And if the room descends into chaos and they're saying, wow, that guy don't know what he's talking about, and I don't know where he's getting them ideas from, that's a lot different than if you have a relationship and you leave in the room and they'll say, let's get it.
right, yeah, yes,
That's leadership.
right,
Leadership is
yeah,
a relationship. You cannot legislate attitude.
right,
You cannot. You could write 100 rules. And if nobody respects what you just said, how many of them rules going to get followed? People will move far enough to get out of the shadow of the hammer. So if you write a rule, they'll comply with it far enough to not get in trouble. But do they really
right,
want to?
yeah,
If you
yeah, are
have
they
a
motivated?
relationship, then they want to. See? So those are the two things I learned about leadership with Disney that really changed my life. But let me tell you about the Spirit of Disney Award. So
Yeah.
I wrote up 11 people, 7 of them got it.
Wow.
This is an award that's so rare that out of all the cast members in Disneyland and DCA, the whole Disneyland resort, probably in the neighborhood of 60,000 employees. And, you know, one's working in the store, one working in maintenance, one in custodial, one working in the warehouse. Out of all those people, about 1 in 1,000 gets that award. Right, right. It's kind of funny. A buddy of mine, his name was Dan Cabral. He sat on a couple of those boards, selection boards, and he said, "We knew when one of yours was coming in because of what I said. I catch people doing things right. So
Yeah.
when I give a write up, it's complete."
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, that's huge from both sides, just I'm
yeah,
sure the
yeah,
people that worked for you, I'm sure appreciated it,
yeah,
but the people that see that, like you said, they can notice when it's coming from Larry. There's some
yeah.
heart there.
Yes, yes, yes. And I'll show you one more thing. Okay. So this right here, can you
Oh,
see that
nice.
all right?
Yeah. Mentor Larry DeShong.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
So,
future leaders.
yes. So 3 of the people who earned the Spirit of Disney Award, I sat down with them, and it was Steve Bryce, Donna Higa-Lewis, and Daryl Zambrano.
Okay, so
They were 3 of the 7, but they were on my team. They worked on my team. So I wrote this Spirited Future Leaders specifically as leadership training. And we would do this during lunch because my director said, don't do this on the clock. So we would, at our lunch, go through and review some of these leadership topics and bring them up to become leaders themselves. And Steve did. He became a manager. So first was to give them the recognition, and it's very public. They have an awarding of the Spirit of Disney ceremony. It's a big luncheon where they get their award. So that's big and public and well recognized, and they get the little Spirit of Disney pin
nice.
that they wear right on the badge. There's
Oh, wow.
actually a spot back here that says you poke a little hole in it, and that's
Okay.
for how you pin your little um, Spirit of Disney award onto your
Wow.
nameplate. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
So those were leadership things I did while I was there. But I never lost my pixie dust. I knew everything that went on behind the scenes, but none of that came out on stage with me. And I had some opportunities to work alongside hourly cast members, folding T-shirts in one of the retail shops and out there assisting with parades and keeping guests safe and, back up on the sidewalk and stuff. And then out at the
Didn't you
tram.
and didn't you do popcorn one time?
Yes.
I
Oh,
thought
I
you
did. I worked the
said that.
popcorn
Yeah.
cart. And they were, especially in the holidays, the high season times, they would ask for managers to volunteer and go out in the park and help different areas, whether
Nice.
it's in retail or at the parade or getting guests off the tram and back on the tram or even at the popcorn cart. Yeah.
Yeah, those will stay busy too. I mean, everything
Yeah.
the you know how it is, the high during the summer and the
Yeah.
holidays, it's
Yes, yes,
everything's
yes.
busy there. You almost can't have enough people.
I was a senior capital planning manager for the whole Disneyland park. We had to plan once a year. The president of the resort would come in, and the senior VP worldwide would come in, and the directors and VP from Disneyland would pitch what things they were asking to be funded for the upcoming year, really 3 years out, but most importantly, the upcoming year. And so that was the last job I did for the last 2.5 years at Disneyland.
I remember you saying you had a presentation with some of the big suits, right?
Right. My job was to prepare all the information, do all the research, get all the costing, get the prioritization of the different lines of business, whether it's foods, whether it's retail, whether it's engineering or engineering maintenance or the different aspects of the business to run Disneyland. I had to meet with all them. Walt Disney Imagineering, huge. Had to meet with each of them, get their desires, get their concerns, and then we had estimators that would go and estimate the scope and cost of that work. But I had to assemble all that into PowerPoint, and I had to take photographs to substantiate the concerns. In other words, paint peeling off of the like City Hall or issues inside the attraction with rock work that needs to be improved. So a lot of that kind of stuff. I did a lot of walks. I was walking Disneyland early as 5 a.m. with
Yeah, I remember you.
senior executives looking at what the work was that needed to be done.
Yeah, I remember you one time when I was working. I think it was when I was in the warehouse. You took me up before the park opened. You took me up to Space Mountain to show me. It was some sort of improve, like the paint. I think you were planning on getting a presentation for the paint
Right.
refurbishment for space, but yeah, so I got a little glimpse of that kind of behind the scenes. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah. No, but my job at the presentation, I sat right across from the president and vice president, but I didn't say nothing. Not my place to say nothing. We had general contractors there sitting next to me that could speak to the technical aspects of the work, right?
Okay.
So they were experts in what this construction was going to cost, how long it was going to take, et cetera, et cetera. And the room is packed, including on the telephone with directors and VPs. And so I didn't say nothing. It was their job to answer the questions and to pitch what they wanted done. The senior executives at Disneyland talking about this is what they would like to see. Now, of course, the budget is not big enough to do all that. So each line of business had to come with a prioritization scheme about what their 1, 2, and 3 choices were. But it was amazing to watch. At that point, I'm just a witness. I got my PowerPoint and I'm just hitting the next slide.
Oh yeah.
But it was a big deck, probably 60 or even 70 slides we're going through.
Wow.
Yeah, it took days, not just for me, but I was Disneyland Park. We had another rep for Disney California Adventure. We had another one for Downtown Disney. Yeah, so it was a multi-day event, but I got to see every inch of the park. I was paid to go out in the park and just look at it
That's pretty
every
cool.
day.
Yeah.
In fact, we did guest perspective walks once a month with the senior VPs and the directors. And we would go out with the park open and just walk through it and look at it with guests' eyes.
Wow.
How's that planter look?
Yeah.
That tree that we just flew in last night with a helicopter. How's that holding up? So we would walk the park using guest eyes. And then we would write up, be my job to write all this down and get it into Maximo and get people working on it to make improvements to what the guest sees.
Wow.
Yeah, isn't that something?
Yeah, it's an important role too, because it's like it does really matter. Like you said, looking through the guest's eyes, and like how hard was the process to like to see everything, to not miss anything, I guess.
We did it once a month. The park doesn't change that much in a month, right?
Yeah.
So that's actually pretty detailed. And you're walking with people that practically live there. I mean, some extraordinarily knowledgeable people I'm working with, and they know every inch of that park.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome.
So let me tell you a little bit more before we wrap it up. So there were a couple of things that I was privileged to do. After being there for 5 years, I got invited to join into a program that's offered to managers that have been there 5 or more years to go through what was called Disney Way
Oh,
1,
wow.
right?
Very cool.
It was a week long, and we had a whole curriculum, schedules every day where senior executives in different aspects of the park would come and talk to us to give us more of a global view of what it takes to run the park, all the elements of park operations. So we had VP from foods, VP from retail, VP from Walt Disney Imagineering, VP from engineering. Engineering's a big deal.
Oh,
Part
yeah.
of Yes, to keep the park running because it takes engineers sometimes to make a decision on whether to open the ride or not. And we have structural engineers that are at home sleeping,
Oh,
but
yeah.
they're on call and they get a call at 2 a.m. You better believe they're there at 3
Wow.
because the park opens at 8. That's the engineer. And that's how seriously Disney takes their maintenance is they have engineers on staff that will show up right now to take a look and see. And sometimes they'll show up and they'll say, "No, you're not opening today." That's their call. Yeah.
Dang.
So I'm telling you about all these different elements. That's an element I know about. But all the different elements during this Disney Way 1, I'm not going to go through the whole list, but I'll see if I can pick out a couple of key ones. Walt Disney Studios. This is where they make the movies, and we got to go tour the studios. We got to go through the archives and look at some of the original cells that were painted by hand for Snow White.
Wow, that'd be cool.
Yeah, the archives was really something. And of course, the studios, we got to go up to see the sound stages. We also
Jeez.
got to go see the modeling shop. So every attraction that Disney builds, they model it first at
Wow.
like 1/100th
Oh,
scale,
yeah.
right? So you can look at then maybe at 1/50th scale, right? Because they're looking to see how does this fit where we're going to put it for not only dimension but theming and all. So they build these models that are exquisitely detailed. We got to
Man.
see some of those.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
up in Burbank, right? The Walt
Yeah.
Disney Studios?
Walt Disney Radio Disney. We used to have a radio broadcast studio in Tomorrowland.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I remember they had one in the ESPN zone. I think it was just an ESPN station, but I didn't know about the Tomorrowland.
Yeah. Yeah, we went up and toured Walt Disney Imagineering and got to see where they do their work, the stations where they worked, entertainment, the parades they put on. They took us through entertainment. Costuming is a whole big department. So all of the cast members, not just the characters, all of the cast members are in costume. This is a warehouse of costumes. So people wear their costume for a day or two. They put it in a laundry chute backstage, which costuming picks up and gets laundered and gets put back out on the floor to then reissue to the cast members. Everything is costumed. So costuming is enormous. Now,
Yeah.
that office I had, we're up on the 3rd floor. Remember, you mentioned it in the last video.
Oh,
You said,
yeah.
"My dad works back there up
Yeah. He was
above
behind the T-Rex.
the T-Rex." Yes. Well, on the bottom floor is costuming where the face characters get prepared to get dressed as that character. But when we went to work, we got to see them down in there. And I'm here to tell you that some of the most beautiful people on earth work at Disneyland because they're all down there in costuming, walking around, talking, laughing, getting ready for their shift. But wow, every Every day, me and Gary rode the elevator and we walked right up to the entrance of costuming, see all them young folks in there laughing and giggling and
Oh,
whatever,
yeah.
and go on up to work. And we look at each other and we go, wow, this place is amazing.
That's pretty awesome.
So so we did all of that. It was a week-long immersion, and we got to go see a whole lot of historical, powerful stuff. But, you and I shared an experience also at the Walt Disney Museum up in San
Yes.
Francisco. So that was remarkable also, but a lot of what we did through Disney Way 1 was similar to the level of what we saw at the museum.
I
Now,
see.
the 5th day, actually it was 5 days, it was a week. The 5th day, you get to go out on stage as a character
Oh, wow.
to to share that experience with the cast members that do this for a living.
Wow. Did you get to choose
No,
what character?
it's really based upon height more than
Oh,
anything
yeah.
else. So, I'll tell you who I was. So we all got to go out and we were stars of the Disneyland show,
Nice. Nice.
right? So they gave us each a photo of ourselves on stage to commemorate that event.
Oh,
And
wow.
and I'm Friar Tuck, if you can't recognize
Nice.
the character.
Yeah, I was wondering. That's awesome.
And
That's a good character.
I was only out there for about 15 minutes, but it gave me a level of respect and understanding for the characters out there on stage, interacting with guests, bringing joy, smiles, happiness, getting photographs that those kids will end up cherishing for the rest of their lives. And some of them will come back to be that
Yeah.
character. That's how
Right.
impactful that is. So just to get a small taste of that part of the business was just remarkable.
Yeah, that is awesome.
And one more thing I'll share with you to wrap up this episode, because I stumbled into this job and
To
look what
beat
I
him.
got.
Yeah.
Look what I got out of it. Okay. Can you see what that says?
Yes, sir. Honorary doctorate.
Yes. It's a certificate they gave me for teaching as a guest lecturer at some of the classes of Disney University. I don't know if you knew that Disney offers college level accredited classes. It's like a whole curriculum, actually. It's kind of a work school experience curriculum. So you actually work a role in the park part time and you attend classes for college credit. And because I'd been in maintenance for some years and had worked at virtually every place in the park in a maintenance role, I started at Disneyland and then I was over at the hotels doing hotel maintenance programs. Also went over to Disney California Adventure and then finally ended up back at Disneyland again as the senior capital planning manager for the Disneyland park. But during that time, I was invited to be a guest lecturer about the maintenance processes at Disneyland, which I was happy to do. I think I did that 4 or 5 times. Just really an honor to be able to speak to those individuals who, like I mentioned before earlier in the video, there are a lot of people that come to Disneyland to be part of Disneyland. And these are young individuals that are taking the time to learn Disney as a part of their undergraduate curriculum, many of whom circle back and become Disney cast members. So it was really a tremendous program. And toward the end of my career, I did apply to become an instructor at Disney University. I wasn't selected. That's okay. But I did my best. Threw my hat in the ring.
Yeah, that's
So,
all you can do.
yes, sir. And it's such a great career, wonderful memories, and we still have a lot more to explore, you and I. One of the things I learned, technique with starting to process some of the videos that me and you are going to share, aviation videos, there's the ability to upload a video and then pause the video without stopping the recording. So, you know, when you and I looked at this video and saw that it still had some issues I need to work through, I was trying to narrate over the top of the video to let you know what was coming next. Actually, what I learned is there's an ability to pause the video, freeze that airplane right where it was flying.
Nice.
For a second while I tell you what to expect next, and then let the airplane keep flying. I can do the same thing with the Disney that we were talking about doing, which is go through the ride, film the whole ride, and then come back and tell the guests what they're seeing, scene by scene. What story has been told by the Imagineers. We can do that using this process. So we video the whole ride, and then we show the video and pause it before the next door opens to give me a chance to tell our viewers, okay, this next scene is going to be about this. And then I let it run and it goes through the door. Then I pause it. And I say the next scene is going to show you this and that. And then we go through the door. There's the ability in this recording process for us to be able to do that, both for the Disney videos and the aviation videos. What do you think?
That's perfect, especially, for people with ADHD like myself. That'll help out a lot, too. You know, hearing about it and then seeing it, it's good to break it up like that for retention, memory retention.
I don't know if our viewers know that actually this is the pre-launch phase. This is where you and I are learning how to do this. If our viewers go back and look at some of the earlier videos, sometimes I'm way up here in the screen. Other times I'm way down here in the screen. Right?
Yeah. So it's like we talk, it's part of the process.
And, we have our bike ride coming up in October. We're actually going to be riding on October 17th and 18th. We'll be at Balboa Park at the Old Globe Theater to meet folks that want to meet us there and talk about the ride. And also they can sign up for Patreon or GoFundMe there. And we've got some merchandise we're just giving away for people that would like to participate in Patreon or GoFundMe. And that'll be on the evening of the 16th. But we're going to be doing a lot in San Diego. We're going to film our old bowling team, the Four Dudes.
Yes,
and we're also going to go up to Oceanside and film where you and I and Gary and even Jer from time to time would stop by and help us with that cart that we called Beach Bites.
Beach Bites, yeah.
That's our Beach Bites cart. So we're going to film that while we're there. So and then we're going to ride to Disneyland, then we'll go into Disneyland. And maybe we'll take our first crack at video on a couple of rides and bringing our guests along with us for all that. But all that is what we're going to accomplish between now and the ride. And when we finish the ride, we'll use the funds we raised from that to officially launch our podcast. Probably on November 1st will be our official launch. We'll be smooth and professional and good looking by then. Don't you think?
Oh, yeah.
But this is really our practice phase. I hope that our viewers are patient and understanding that sometimes we mess up and sometimes our video looks less than professional, but we're getting better. We're getting better for you, believe us. And so I want to close on the note of to love out loud. And I want to reinforce that again. Disney is a great backdrop for loving out loud. This is what Walt did for the world. He loved us all out loud with this park, with these parks. And as I've described, the level of effort to sustain Walt's dream, all an act of love. The cast members that work at Disneyland love Walt Disney, and they share it with you with that same level of love. So my advice today is love out loud. Someone tomorrow, tell them you love them, but also look around you. The world is packed with love. Notice it and say it out loud to someone, to yourself. That the world is filled with love. Disney is one of those things you can talk about when you make that statement. All right, yes, sir. Well, love being here with you because this is a project you asked me to do, and I love you for asking because this is great, and we haven't even started yet.
Right.
Wait till after our bike ride to Disneyland, and then get ready for what's coming next. See you again next time.
Yep.
All right, bye-bye.